I love SpongeBob SquarePants. Not that SpongeBob. This SpongeBob. The good-natured, bubbly undersea fry cook who is too naive for his own good. You see, every time I tell someone that SpongeBob is one of my absolute favorite TV shows, I have to explain that I'm only a fan of the original seasons, 1 through 3, which is what many fans recognize as the golden era of the show's runtime. But let's back up for a moment to where it all began, with one man, the late Stephen Hillelburg. During the 1980s, off the coast of Dana, California, Hillenburg taught marine biology at the Orange County Marine Institute. There he created an educational comic called The Intertidal Zone, starring Bob the Sponge. This comic strip soon jump-started a concept for an animated series which Hillenburg pitched to Nickelodeon, called SpongeBoy Ahoy! However, discovering that the name was already copyrighted by a mop company, Hillenburg opted for the name SpongeBob instead. Hillenburg spearheaded the creative team from the show's debut in 1999 through the SpongeBob movie and the end of Season 3 in 2004. That marked what many fans considered to be the canonical end of SpongeBob, as Hillenburg intended to stop after Season 3 rather than allow the show's quality to spiral downhill. Yet, sadly, that is exactly what happened when Stephen Hillelburg stepped down as executive producer. Over the next 2 decades, SpongeBob would become Nickelodeon's longest-running show, and the network would stop at nothing to milk every last dollar from the SpongeBob franchise. After Hillenburg's passing in 2018, Nickelodeon created a new spin-off of SpongeBob called Camp Coral. The prequel series faced harsh criticism from fans, who pointed out that the plot contradicted the show's original canon. Paul Tibbitt, one of Hillenburg's colleagues and fellow SpongeBob writers, tweeted this regarding the spin-off. "This is some greedy, lazy executiving right here, and they all know full well Steve would have hated this. Shame on them." While I could go on forever about my personal gripes with the new SpongeBob, in this video I will instead focus on what made the original season so iconic, in particular, the relatability and wit.
Okay, Mr. Essay, I say, prepare to be written!
There's a reason why SpongeBob SquarePants has become a goldmine for memes and pop culture references.
Done. Now let's see how it looks so far. The break time!
SpongeBob understood its audience. It tailor-made its episodes to relate to real-world circumstances. Its character dynamics reflect the relationships we experience in day-to-day life, from best friends and business rivals to penny-pinching employers and frustrated teachers. For example, over the years as I've grown up and matured, Squidward has gradually become my favorite character from SpongeBob, and I think this is intentional on the creator's part. When you're younger, you may find yourself relating more with SpongeBob. He's optimistic, youthful, naive, and overly trusting, often to a fault. He's everyone's best friend, a people pleaser, and a faithful employee and student. He's a child in all but name. While SpongeBob's primary characteristics are his optimism and gullibility, part of the beauty of the original seasons is that his character is not confined to a box. Like people in real life, SpongeBob demonstrates a range of emotions. In fact, many of the show's funniest moments occur when SpongeBob gets fed up being charitable and finally loses his cool.
Listen, you cross-anxious cheapskate! Squidward's been living at my house driving me crazy, and you're not gonna hire him back all because of a stupid dime!
Squidward, on the other hand, serves as a kind of foil for SpongeBob and has a more jaded and negative outlook on life. And while the audience often laughs at Squidward's expense, they also learn to sympathize with him, because his misfortunes might just hit a little too close to home. Over and over, Squidward is dealt a bad hand in life. He works a minimum wage, 9-to-5 job. He has aspirations to be a successful artist and musician, but they don't pan out. He must tolerate his troublesome neighbors. In many ways, the world seems out to get him for no apparent reason. While he is primarily a grouch, Squidward has his moments that remind us that he is a multi-dimensional character like SpongeBob. The most vivid example of this comes from one of the most iconic episodes of the series, Pizza Delivery in Season 1. In this episode, Mr. Krabs sends Squidward and SpongeBob to deliver a to-go order. After losing their car, getting stranded in the middle of nowhere, and swooped up by a tornado, Squidward and SpongeBob finally reach the customer's house. However, in a twist ending, the customer refuses to accept the pizza because it didn't come with his drink. SpongeBob completely breaks down, feeling like he failed at his job. In one of my favorite scenes of the entire series, Squidward shows compassion and stands up for his crushed coworker. This scene is a key example of what makes SpongeBob both relatable and iconic.
Another one? Look, I told your little friend I ain't paying for that!
Well, this one's on the...
In addition to its relatability, SpongeBob is one of the most iconic sitcoms ever because its timeless humor can be appreciated by all age groups. I like to categorize the show's humor into three main categories: physical comedy, self-awareness, and what I like to call the unexpected. Physical comedy includes exaggerated facial expressions, body language, and any other visual gags in the animation. Oftentimes, this comes in the form of freeze frames. In the newer seasons, the show relies almost entirely on physical comedy and way overused, off-putting, gross-out jokes. But in the original seasons, physical comedy was used more sparingly and to achieve a purpose.
I'd sure like to go to this party, but I can't read the invitation.
Me neither.
Whoever sent this obviously has no idea about the physical limitations of life underwater. Well, might as well throw these in the fire.
In addition to physical comedy, the humor in SpongeBob resonates so well because it is self-aware. The show knows how to make fun of itself and the storytelling tropes it relies on.
We don't even exist. We're just a clever visual metaphor used to personify the abstract concept of thought.
Some of the funniest SpongeBob moments occur due to what I would call the unexpected. This can include instances where characters find themselves in extreme circumstances due to the suspension of disbelief. It can also come in the form of out-of-pocket jokes that completely subvert the audience's expectations. One of my favorite examples of this is when SpongeBob or Patrick unintentionally roast other characters. Because they are such well-meaning and ignorant characters, they are totally oblivious to the insults they're making, which makes it that much funnier.
Take that pile of filth out with you.
Oh, Mr. Krabs! You shouldn't talk about Squidward like that!
Sometimes, SpongeBob even combines all three of these categories. A primary example comes from the episode Club SpongeBob in Season 3. Personally, I think this is one of the funniest scenes in the entire series, with each joke following the other.
Stuck in the middle of nowhere with SpongeBob and Patrick. Oh, why must every 11 minutes of my life be filled with misery? Why?
Oh, cheer up, Squid. It could be worse.
Yeah, you could be bald and have a big nose.
Well, this is the end.
No, it's not, Squidward.
It's not?
First, in this scene, we see the suspension of disbelief, or the unexpected. The clubhouse defies all laws of physics by being launched hundreds of miles away into the forest. Then, if you look closely, we see physical comedy in the background as SpongeBob and Patrick are casually holding hands and smiling despite being in a life-or-death situation. After this, we see an example of self-aware humor when Squidward breaks the fourth wall by remarking that every 11 minutes of his life are miserable. As the audience, we know that as a nod to the length of each episode of SpongeBob, which is approximately 11 minutes. Then, as a cherry on top, Patrick unexpectedly roasts Squidward on accident and subverts audiences' expectations by constructing coffins rather than reacting like a normal person would in that situation. This scene perfectly encapsulates the clever humor and sarcasm that SpongeBob mastered in its first 3 seasons. In conclusion, the original seasons of SpongeBob SquarePants are iconic in part because of their relatability and witty humor. If you've never given SpongeBob a try, I would highly recommend you do. Maybe start out with episodes such as Pizza Delivery, Chocolate with Nuts, the Camping episode, or Band Geeks. I promise you won't be sorry. There are so many other unique elements of classic SpongeBob that I love, but I was unable to cover them in this video, such as the animation style and voice acting. But each of these elements combined are to thank for making SpongeBob one of the funniest and most timeless sitcoms ever created.